Welcome to the Men's Yoga Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Jivasu again for Ask Jivasu. And today we're going to ask Jivasu, why do we have emotions and what do they do for us? Jivasu, if you would please.
Right. Yeah. It's a very important questions because emotions, they form the core of our personality, who we are. And that is defined by emotions. But the first question is why emotions are there. And in order to understand that, we have to go in evolution. So life evolved from a cell started 3.8 billion years ago. And life inherently wants to survive, reproduce, and evolve. And evolution means more complexity, better and more comfortable survival, and more predictability. And that is what we humans do. We always interpret, anticipate, and predict. So we'll survive better. So that is what precisely happened, that in the beginning, the life was quite primal, quite primitive, a cellular life. And later on, emotions emerged. And what was the purpose of emotions? A better and more predictable survival. So, for example, if I have fear, because fear is the fundamental emotion, then because of that fear, I will prepare myself for the future events, which can bring disease, trauma, decay, or death. So in that way, fear is such an important emotion for the survival and to grow. In the same way, anger. Anger is a very beautiful emotion because by anger, we create a boundary around ourselves so nobody will come and damage us or destroy us, because that is a function of anger. Somebody approaching us with hostility will say no, individually or collectively, even at the level of community or nation. We express anger in form of war, and I'm talking here about defensive war, not offensive war. Same thing about disgust. When I see a cake in my plate is covered with some green mold, there is immediately a sense of disgust. In that way, in that emotion, I am protecting myself from future infection which could kill me. Or sadness. Whenever negative thing happens, energy is drained out, I feel sad, so I withdraw in order to gather again that energy and to go out again in the world. So it's a protective mechanism. Happiness, emotion of happiness takes me out into the world, explore it. Optimism, that is how we do all the creative work. So what I'm trying to say, that emotions' main role is longer and better survival of life, which we call homeostasis in physiology, and anticipate and predict events and prepare for them.
How many emotions do we have?
Well, emotions are two types. The number one is called primary emotions, and they are for our biological survival. And there are 6 of them: fear, anger, happiness, sadness, surprise, and disgust. So those are the 6 biological survival. And the second category of emotion is social emotions. Because we are social beings, we are psychological beings. So our psychological survival is very important also. So for example, if I hurt someone psychologically, said the bad words, then I experience emotion of guilt. Now, here there is no question of biological survival because still I will survive, but my psychological survival will at stake because I'm hurting somebody's feeling. And if not, I'm not saying sorry, which comes out of guilt, then most likely those relationships will disappear. They will be destroyed. So what happens? I'm hurting somebody's feeling. I will say sorry out of guilt. And again, people will forgive me and I become the part of the family or community. Those are called social emotions, and they are guilt, jealousy, gratitude, empathy, pride. So all those are social emotions. So these are the two main categories.
Is so between the two, the primary, there seems to be a lot of negative, and the secondary seems a bit more positive, like with emotions.
Most of the emotions are negative.
Okay.
And the reason is that because we are surrounded by huge number of people, life form, and nature's ups and down and turbulence. So the negative emotions actually help us to protect, because then we take caution. Because if we are always, in a happy mood, positive mood about everything, it's not effect on life.
Right.
So negative emotions were created to protect life, to take cautions, interpret, anticipate.
What would be the difference between feelings and emotions then?
Um, Emotions are objective, means you can see them on the face or in our gestures. Feelings are subjective. So, for example, I'm angry. So, anger will show on my face, in my gesture, in my body language, but simultaneously, I'm feeling anger inside me. Sometimes, what happens, I may not express the emotion of anger, but still I'm feeling angry. So, in front of the boss or somebody who is senior, I know that I cannot express anger because it will become quite bad, or sometimes in front of the children. But still, that anger is felt. So feelings are subjective inside, and emotions are objective, which are expressed. Because the literal meaning of emotion is emotion, external movement,
Mm.
shown. So that is the fundamental difference.
With that being said, with the anger, like the example you gave, having the anger towards a boss and not expressing it. Now we're not expressing it to help ourselves in the external world. What happens on the internal world, like inside of us, when if we don't express something like that? Does that negatively impact our system?
Exactly. Because the idea of emotions is to express them. And if they are not expressed, they will accumulate. So when emotions are expressed, they are positive. When emotions are accumulated, they become poison. Because each emotion has its counterpart in our hormones, neurochemicals, neurotransmitters. It changes the physiology. So if too much is accumulated, it becomes toxic. No negative emotion is dangerous. It becomes a problem when it is accumulated. Fear is wonderful to protect. Once fear is accumulated, it becomes persistent anxiety. Anger becomes violence. Jealousy becomes hatred. Surprise becomes shock. Sadness becomes depression. Happiness becomes mania. excess of any emotion, whether positive or negative, because body doesn't want excess of anything, negative or positive. That is how it maintains its balance.
Right. What about what about suffering? Is suffering an emotion or a feeling?
Suffering is a very complex concept. So I won't classify suffering as emotion, because it is also thoughts, concept, definitions, all kinds of things are included in it. So it depends on my background, that how I suffer. In suffering, the jealousy may be there may be sadness, there may be fear, there may be anger. They can all bring suffering. So it depends on my cultural, social, or personal history. So suffering in itself is not an emotion, but it is a collection of many, many things.
So so it can be like you're suffering from all sorts of emotions come together.
That's
And
right.
then are you becoming like a slave of that? Like are you becoming like within suffering, are you becoming a slave to the emotions?
That's correct. Because that is why I differentiate between sorrow and suffering.
Okay.
Sorrow is transient, it is necessary. If we have a loss, if we have tragedy, if we have trauma, if we have illness, sorrow. And sorrow's quality is it comes and goes, comes and goes. Suffering means continuation of it. And if suffering appears, we become its slave. Our life is trapped in it.
When you look at the Dalai Lama, he looks so joyous all the time. And is there, how does he do that? Is there an emotion we should be programming out of our system?
That's right. So a person like Dalai Lama also goes through sorrow. It's inevitable. Many of his colleagues died, his own people were killed, he was exiled, he's under threat. So he goes through sorrow. But the quality of his mind is such now, because of religion, because of meditation, because of his spirituality, that sorrow comes and it slips out. It doesn't stay.
We need to learn to train ourselves to have it, acknowledge it, and let it slip out.
That's right. And actually, there is a research about it by Richard Davidson, who worked on meditation. And what he found, that a very long-term deep meditator developed a growth of the left prefrontal cortex in their brain. And left prefrontal cortex is connected with the emotions or feelings of love, compassion, and positive well-being. So it is the inherent quality of human being about which we are not aware, but we can bring it back.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there an emotion that we should be expressing more? But would those be the emotion we should be expressing more, or I guess training ourselves to awaken in ourselves?
That's right, to be awakened. And that awakening is of our innate capability of remaining tranquil, joyful, and love. Because that is the part of our system. But we have to express it and we have to cultivate it.
Going back to when you brought up with anger, so I think you mentioned anger, like it's a weird. Can anger be a good emotion?
It is a beautiful emotion. It's a protective emotion. So if you really look into the human history, all revolutions in our world whether revolution for democracy, equality, child's right, feminism, or racist, or apartheid, any revolution in human history is always born out of anger. Some injustice is done to me or to my community.
Then looking at grief, why do men have they have trouble expressing grief, or we've been like maybe socially conditioned to not express our
That's
grief?
right. Yeah, because the idea of not expressing grief is born out of a pseudo masculine values. To be a man or to be strong means I must not express it.
And then doing that, we're just hurting, we're building that part up in the body, not expressing it. And
Exactly. And if we are not expressing it, I will be grieving inside me and I will give grief to others. Because anything which is accumulated becomes poison. It not only affects me, even people around me will be affected. Because I'll be grieving somewhere silently all the time. So how I will make the people around me happy? A lot of people become cruel.
then what can we do to balance these emotions? Because it is, with, like you said, it's within a balance now, starting from children, say our children, to adulthood. What should we do for our children first to kind of making sure they're balanced within their emotions?
That's right. The most important part is that they must be allowed to express. We should not, as adult, prevent them. We have to watch, we have to observe their emotion, because then we will understand their personality. And then we must encourage them to regulate, not suppress, regulate. Because anger should be experienced, to be expressed in such a way it doesn't hurt other. And that is called regulation or developing emotional intelligence.
Would regulation be just making them aware of what they're feeling?
Exactly.
Okay.
And also express it appropriately rather than hitting someone or hurting someone. So that is why emotions, first thing I say, awareness, acknowledgement, number one. Number two, understand why that emotion is there, what it is asking me to do. Emotion is all about action. So anger will tell me that I have to take certain action because injustice is done, and it will be resolved. So awareness, understanding, expressing. Fourth part is transforming. So the energy of emotion is now transformed into some creative act. Lot of athletes, scientists, revolutionaries, they were very angry people. So for example, Muhammad Ali, all-time great boxer, he was very angry. But instead of destroying himself or destroying other, he created, the boxing part in his life, and he brought the issue. And the last part is transcending. So becoming aware, understanding, expressing, transforming, transcending. Those are the 5 ways to deal with emotions.
I guess what we're having is a pattern that we always kind of cycle through, and we kind of develop that pattern. So an emotion that always keeps coming up for us, if we don't start acknowledging it, then it's just going to keep coming up for us the next time over and over, maybe even going bigger. But when we start recognizing that emotion, that hump, as the record's going around, it humps up, And then if we start leveling that hump out, then we can start controlling our emotions or expressing it in the balanced way.
Exactly. Because a pattern which is etched in our brain and body, if we don't respond to it, it will snowball, it will accumulate. And time to time, it will explode in a very negative way. So once we become aware, we are taking the energy out of it. And by taking the energy out, we are accumulating more and more life energy in our body. And that life energy becomes so strong at one point, it will shatter that endless cycle of emotion. And that is how all negative emotions, emotional patterns are broken. Because we need energy. And how we take energy? By become aware of it. The moment we pay attention, we are not giving it more energy to this parasitic pattern.
I remember taking your course, and it was the first time where I was aware of my reactions I was having. And I was in an angry mood. And I think me and my daughter were having like a little bit of a tiff or whatever. And she opened the fridge door, and this huge can of mayonnaise fell out and landed on my toe. And it was funny because typically that's where it would like pop the fuse and okay, you're in trouble now kind of thing, right? And when it hit, I didn't have chance to react because it hurt so much. But that pause, like I mean, that gave me the pause to think of what you were teaching and going, okay, I got to take this a different way because normal Matt would go this way. Let's try taking this another way. And I stood up. It was the first time I really acknowledged reaction instead of like an action. And I stood up and talked to my daughter, and I just said, hey, look at, because I think she was waiting for dad to blow a fuse, right?
Right.
And I stood up and I gave her a hug and I said, look at, I know you didn't mean that. And I know we were just having just a little tip, and I know you didn't do that on purpose. And you know what? It was for me, it was just started changing everything and started really being able to slow down my reaction to things and try to or just start the balancing act, right? And start
That's right.
playing with it. And it was really all because of your teachings, because of that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have acknowledged it before.
That's right. Yeah, but that is the part of you, inherent part of us, which we are not aware or explore, and that is how it came up. And that doesn't mean that we won't react to certain situation very promptly because we have to fix certain situation. But other situation we cannot react because it's useless. So that is where it comes to. So anger has to be expressed, but at the right point.
Right.
That is that is what emotional intelligence is. So what you did in those moments was truly an expression of emotional intelligence.
Right. And you know what I was thinking too is like not only did it teach me something, it taught my daughter something as well, because she's been conditioned with our original conditioning anyways, that
That's
it was
right.
also expressing that to her. And I thought it was a learning session actually for both of us, really.
Yes, yes.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today exploring emotions a little bit with us, but you're offering a lot of things that people can learn more with. Do you want to share just what you have going on right now?
That's right, because our programs are called somatofulness, and somatofulness basically is the awareness of the body and its life energy. And that is very much connected to the topic which we are exploring, because once we are aware of our body and sensation and life energy in it, we can almost regulate everything at the level of energy before it turns into emotions, feelings, thoughts, or any other thing. And by going into that energy, actually will be fully connected with ourselves and all living things around us. So it becomes a sacred experience. And that is what we offer on Sundays which is a regular gathering, and it is a free online gathering. And also we offer programs about somatofulness, the body and its life energy. So if somebody is interested, they are welcome to join us. We have a website, jivasu.org, and they can register.
Okay, and we'll have the links provided in the information there as well. And your satsangs that you do on Thursday or Sunday,
Sundays.
yeah, you can also catch them on your podcast because you have a podcast as well.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll offer those in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much again, Jivasu, and we'll see you next time on Ask Jivasu. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Matt, for giving me this opportunity.